My name is Sarah and I'm 34 years old. I'm gonna be honest, after the divorce I probably should have sold that house. It was way too big for just one person. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a huge attic and a basement I never used. My ex-husband and I bought it thinking we'd have kids, start a family, you know how it is. But things didn't work out that way. I got the house in the settlement. He didn't want to fight for it. I think neither of us really wanted that place after everything that happened between us. But I needed somewhere to live and selling would be too much work. So I stayed. I lived alone in that house for 2 whole years. I told myself I'd find a way to use the space. Like since I worked from home, maybe I'd use one room as my office and then have a workout room and a bedroom all separate so it wasn't so empty. But I never really got around to it. The entire huge house was mostly left hollow and vacant. If you opened a random door, chances are there'd be nothing behind it but a dusty and used room. I wouldn't even go into half the rooms for months at a time. I didn't mind it too much, but occasionally I'd get that uneasy feeling of being alone in a giant empty house mixed with just overall loneliness. It was on an October afternoon starting to get cold that I met the cat. He just showed up in my backyard. He was a black and white cat, kind of skinny, with one ear sort of torn. Clearly a stray. I felt bad and left a plate of tuna on the porch. The next day he was there again. And the day after that too. After a week of doing this, I realized he wasn't going anywhere. So I bought cat food, a litter box, and officially adopted him. I named him Chester. Chester was strange from the beginning. He wasn't affectionate like the cats I had as a kid. He was observant. He'd spend hours standing in a corner, staring blankly at nothing. Or at least that's what I thought was nothing. The first weird thing happened 3 days after he came inside. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when I heard Chester meowing. It wasn't a normal meow. It was desperate, loud, insistent. Like a scream. I ran to the living room and found him in front of the basement door. His claws dug into the wood, scratching hard, meowing non-stop. When I tried to pick him up, Chester scratched me and went back to attacking the door. Chester, stop. What the hell? I said, irritated, holding my scratched hand. I opened the basement door thinking maybe there was a mouse down there and he wanted to hunt. The stairs descended into complete darkness. I turned on the light. Chester ran down, disappearing between the old boxes and furniture covered with sheets that my ex and I left down there. I went down after him, calling his name. The basement smelled like mold and old wood. It was damp and cold. I found Chester standing under the stairs, staring fixedly at the wall. His fur was bristled, his tail puffed up, his ears completely back. There's nothing here, Chester. Let's go. But he didn't move. He just stood there, totally motionless, staring at that empty concrete wall like there was something on the other side. After 5 minutes trying to convince him to come up, I just gave up and went up alone, leaving the door ajar in case he decided to come back. Chester spent the entire day in the basement. He didn't come up to eat, didn't come up for anything. When night fell, I went down again to get him and found him in the exact same spot, same position, still staring at the wall. That gave me chills. I eventually got him out of there, but he spent the whole night walking around the house. I could hear his little paws on the wooden floor, running from one room to another. Sometimes he'd stop and I'd hear that strange meow again. Over the following days, his behavior got worse. Chester started hunting, something I couldn't see. He'd crouch in the middle of the living room, eyes fixed on the ceiling, his body tense like he was about to pounce. Then suddenly he'd take off, climbing up the walls, jumping on furniture, chasing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing I could see. Are you seeing ghosts, Chester? I'd laugh nervously, trying to make a joke of the situation. But it wasn't funny. It was disturbing. One night, around 2 in the morning, I woke up to a noise. It wasn't Chester. It was different. It sounded like footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from upstairs. From the attic. I froze in bed, listening. They were definitely footsteps. Someone walking around the attic. My heart raced. Chester was at the foot of my bed, completely still, looking at the ceiling. His eyes followed the sound, moving as the footsteps moved up there. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police. But the footsteps stopped. Total silence. I waited 10 minutes, 15, 20. Nothing else. In the morning, I went up to the attic. The door was locked exactly as I'd left it. I opened it and climbed the stairs. There were boxes everywhere, old furniture, junk that came with the house when we bought it. Everything covered in dust. But in the farthest corner, near a small window, there was an area where the dust was disturbed. Like someone had been sitting there. And beside it, an empty water bottle. A bottle I didn't recognize. My stomach turned. Is anyone there? My voice came out shaky, ridiculous. Obviously no one was there. I looked all over the attic. I was alone. I went down quickly, locked the door and put a chair against it. It wasn't much, but it made me feel better. Chester continued acting strangely. He stopped eating properly. He spent the whole day in a state of alert, following something invisible with his eyes. Sometimes he'd stop in front of a closet or a wall and just stand there, staring, fur bristled. I started thinking I'd adopted a cat with mental problems. Until one night, everything made sense. It was 3 in the morning when I realized Chester wasn't in bed with me. Usually he slept at my feet. I turned on the bedroom light and called for him. Nothing. I got up and started looking around the house. Living room, kitchen, bathroom. Nothing. I went to the second-floor hallway where the empty bedrooms were. All the doors were closed as always, except one. The door to the guest room at the end of the hallway was ajar. I'm absolutely certain I hadn't opened that door in weeks. I walked slowly toward it, my heart pounding in my chest. I pushed the door all the way open. The room was empty. Just a bed with no sheets and a large built-in closet on the wall. And in front of the closet, Chester was standing, completely motionless. Fur completely bristled, tail thick as a brush, back arched. He was growling. A low, guttural sound I'd never heard come from him. "Chester?" I whispered. He didn't react. Kept staring at the closet. I approached slowly. I put my hand on the closet handle and pulled. The door opened and my blood ran cold. There was a hole in the back wall of the closet. A hole big enough for a person to pass through. And on the other side, darkness. A narrow space that shouldn't exist. A tight corridor between the walls. I grabbed my phone and used the flashlight to illuminate the hole. The beam of light revealed a cramped space that extended along the side of the house. There were drag marks on the floor. And back there, barely visible, I saw something that made my stomach churn. A blanket. A water bottle. An empty fast food bag. Someone was living there. Someone was living between the walls of my house. I backed away quickly, grabbed Chester in my arms, he was trembling, and ran to my bedroom. I locked the door, put the dresser in front of it, and called the police. They arrived in 15 minutes. 4 officers. They asked me to wait in the patrol car while they inspected the house. It took almost an hour. When they finally came back, one of the officers came to talk to me. He looked disturbed. "We found several access points," he said. "Between the walls, in the attic, even in the basement. This person knew exactly how to move through the house without being seen. And there are things in there. Clothes, food, photos." Photos. My voice failed. "Photos of you. Of you sleeping, cooking, watching TV. This person had been watching you for quite some time." I felt like throwing up. "Were they here when you arrived?" I asked. "No. But there are signs they left recently. Probably when they heard the sirens. I never went back to that house. Not even to get my things. I asked friends to pick up the essentials and put everything up for sale the following week. I sold it for way less than it was worth just to get rid of it fast. The police never found out who it was. There were no useful fingerprints, no security cameras in the neighborhood. Just nothing. Sometimes I think about how long that person was there. Were they already there when my ex-husband and I lived together? Were they there when we had sex, when we fought, when we cried alone after everything fell apart? Or did they only show up after I was alone? I don't know which is worse. Chester is still with me today. I live in a small apartment now, ground floor, thin walls that hide nothing. Chester went back to normal. He sleeps, eats, acts like a regular cat. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up and see him sitting at the window looking outside. And I wonder if he's seeing something I can't see. I wonder if that person is still out there. I wonder if they followed me. I was 29 years old and absolutely exhausted. Working remotely as a programmer seemed like a dream. No boss breathing down your neck, no office, no dress code. But the reality was being available all the time, video calls at 7 in the morning, Slack messages at 11 at night. I couldn't separate work from personal life because everything happened in the same place, my 1-bedroom apartment in Seattle. That's why I rented the cabin. 2 full weeks out of the city in the middle of the mountains near Bend. It was one of those properties you find on Airbnb with beautiful photos, all made of wood, stone fireplace, huge windows overlooking the pine trees. Isolated enough to have peace, but not so far that I'd be without internet to work. I arrived in late January right after a heavy snowstorm. The access road was covered in packed snow and the trees looked like white ghosts against the gray sky. The cabin was exactly like in the photos. Cozy. Quiet. Perfect. For the first 3 days, everything was great. I'd wake up, make coffee, work for a few hours, go out for a walk in the snow, come back to work some more. The routine was simple and it worked. At night I'd light the fireplace, make something for dinner and watch something on my laptop until I fell asleep. The cabin had an open floor plan living room, kitchen and dining area all integrated. The bedroom was in the only hallway along with the bathroom. Just one floor. Simple as that. It was on the fourth night that I noticed the first weird thing. I had eaten dinner and washed the dishes, leaving a pan drying upside down on the sink. I went to the bathroom, came back maybe 10 minutes later, and the pan was right side up. Flipped. I stood there staring at it, trying to make sense of it. Had I left it like that? No, I was absolutely certain how I'd left it. But also, who else could have touched it? I convinced myself I was tired, that I'd left it the way it was and just didn't remember right. It happens. The next morning, I woke up and went to the kitchen to make coffee. The chair at the dining table was pulled out, away from the table. Not much, just enough to look like someone had gotten up and forgotten to push it back. I hadn't sat there since dinner. And I was certain, absolutely certain, that I'd pushed the chair in afterward. My stomach tightened. I looked around the cabin. Everything seemed normal, quiet. But there was something in the air, a feeling that wasn't there before. Like the space was no longer completely mine. I spent the day working but distracted. I couldn't stop looking at that chair. It was ridiculous. Who would break into a cabin just to move a chair? That night, before going to sleep, I made sure to check all the doors and windows. Everything locked. I looked out the living room window at the dark forest outside. The snow reflected a bit of moonlight, creating strange shadows between the trees. I didn't see anything. No movement. I went to bed, but it took hours to fall asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night with the feeling that something was wrong. That kind of abrupt awakening where you're immediately completely conscious. I lay in the darkness, completely still, listening. And then I heard it. A creak. Wood compressing under weight. Coming from the living room. Someone was walking through the cabin. My heart exploded in my chest. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, my hands shaking. I opened the camera and put it in recording mode, the screen's glow faintly illuminating the room. The creaking stopped. Absolute silence. I waited. 1 minute. 2. 5. Nothing. Had I imagined it? Was the cabin just settling with the cold? I got up slowly, every movement seeming too loud. I put on sweatpants and carefully opened the bedroom door. The hallway was dark. I turned on the light. Empty. I walked to the living room. I turned on all the lights. Nothing out of place. I checked the doors. Locked. The windows. Closed. But then I saw it. On the big living room window outside there were footprints in the snow. Footprints that came right up to the glass. Someone had been there looking inside. My blood ran cold. The footprints weren't there earlier. I'm sure of it. I would have seen them. I followed the marks with my eyes. They came from the side of the house, stopped at the window, and then continued, going all around the cabin. Back to the forest. I grabbed my phone and called the owner. It went to voicemail. It was 3 in the morning. Of course it went to voicemail. I called the police. The dispatcher was polite but didn't seem particularly alarmed. He said he'd send a patrol as soon as possible, but the road up there was tricky at night with the snow. Could take a while. I spent the next 2 hours sitting on the couch, my back to the wall, all the lights on, staring at the windows. The patrol arrived when the sun was rising. 2 officers. They checked around the cabin and confirmed there were recent footprints. But the snow had started falling again during the night and the marks were being covered quickly. Probably someone lost, one of them said. Or curious. These isolated properties sometimes attract hikers or homeless people looking for shelter. The person circled the entire house, I said. That's not the behavior of someone lost. The older officer nodded. I understand your concern. We'll increase patrols in the area. But I recommend you maybe consider going back to the city earlier. As a precaution. I should have listened. But there were still 8 days left on my reservation. I'd paid for it. And during the day with the sun shining on the snow, everything seemed silly. Exaggerated paranoia. I decided to stay. That day passed without incidents. I worked, made food, avoided looking too much at the windows. When night fell, I locked everything twice. I put a chair against the front door. I left lights on throughout the cabin. I went to bed but kept my phone in my hand. Around 2 in the morning I heard it again. But this time it wasn't inside the cabin. It was footsteps in the snow outside. Crunching. The unmistakable sound of someone walking. I got up and peeked through the bedroom curtain. My window faced the side of the house. At first I didn't see anything. Just trees and bluish snow under the moonlight. Then a figure moved. A person. Wearing dark clothes, moving slowly between the trees. They weren't walking in a straight line. They were circling. Again. Walking around the cabin. I grabbed the phone and called the police again. While talking to the dispatcher, I kept my eyes on the figure outside. And then they stopped, turned directly toward my window. Even from far away, even in the darkness, I knew they were looking straight at me. "They're here now," I whispered into the phone. "The person is outside right now. Stay inside. Don't go out. Patrol has already been dispatched." The figure didn't move, just stood there staring at me through the glass. I couldn't see their face. It was too far, too dark. But I felt the weight of the gaze. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Me paralyzed at the window, the person standing between the trees. It felt like hours but was probably minutes. Then, slowly, the figure raised an arm and waved. A slow, deliberate wave. My stomach turned. I pulled away from the window, closed the curtain, and went to the living room. I didn't want to stay in the bedroom. Too isolated. Too many windows. I sat on the couch, facing the front door, and waited. The footsteps started again outside. Walking. Circling. Sometimes they'd stop. Then start again. When the police finally arrived 40 minutes later, the footsteps had stopped a while ago. The officers searched the area with flashlights. They found the footprints again, a circular trail around the cabin going back and forth from the trees. But nobody around. "It's the same person from last night," the older officer said, examining the marks. "Same shoe size. Same pattern. Why would someone do this?" My voice came out higher than I wanted. "I don't know. But you need to get out of here. No. This person clearly has some kind of fixation with this property or with you specifically. It's not safe." I packed that same hour. At 5 in the morning, with a patrol escorting me, I left the cabin. I drove back to Seattle without looking in the rearview mirror. The owner refunded my money without questioning. He said he was going to install security cameras and maybe rethink renting the place during winter. But 3 weeks later, I got a message from him. "Did you leave something here?" I replied no, that I'd taken everything. He sent a photo. It was my coffee mug, the one I used every morning. I was certain I'd washed it and put it away before leaving. But in the photo, it was on the dining table, full of fresh coffee, still steaming. "Found this today when I came to check the property," he wrote. "Thought maybe you'd come back?" I didn't go back. Never again. To this day, I don't know who that person in the trees was. What they wanted. Why me? But sometimes when I'm alone in my apartment late at night, I look out the window, and I wonder if that figure is still out there. Still circling. Still watching. Still waiting. I had just turned 19 when I finally moved out of my parents' house. It wasn't because of a fight or anything dramatic like that. I just wanted to have my own space, you know? Independence. I'd lived with them my whole life, and it was just that time to be a real adult. I found a small apartment in Austin, on the second floor of an old building near the university. It wasn't anything special, 1 bedroom, living room and kitchen integrated, tiny bathroom. But it was mine. The move was smooth. My parents helped me bring stuff over, and my mom cried a little at the goodbye, which was kind of embarrassing but also kind of sweet. After they left, I just stood there in the middle of the empty living room, surrounded by boxes, and felt that mix of excitement and nervousness. First night truly alone. The first few weeks were great. I worked part-time at a coffee shop nearby and spent the rest of my time playing video games, watching what I wanted, eating what I wanted. Total freedom. The building was old and noisy. You could hear neighbors walking in the apartments next door and above. You'd hear muffled conversations, music, a dog barking. It was annoying sometimes but also kind of comforting. Made me feel less alone. It was after about 3 weeks that I started noticing weird things. Small things. Things that made you wonder if you were going crazy or just being forgetful. Like, I was sure I'd left half a gallon of milk in the fridge. But when I went to make cereal for breakfast, it was almost empty. I thought it was weird because I didn't remember drinking that much, but whatever. Maybe I had. Then it was the towel in the bathroom. I went to shower at night, and the towel I'd left dry in the morning was slightly damp. Not soaked, just damp. Like someone had used it and it had almost dried again. I held the towel in my hands, confused. It didn't make sense. I hadn't showered since morning. And I lived alone. That night, it took me a while to fall asleep. It started getting more obvious after that. Things I couldn't just ignore or rationalize. Like the TV. Several times I came home from work and the TV in the living room was warm. Not hot, but definitely warm, like when you just turned it off. But I hadn't watched TV before leaving. I'm sure of that. Then it was the clothes. I noticed one of my favorite t-shirts, a black band shirt I wore all the time, was in the dirty laundry basket. But I hadn't worn it. I knew I hadn't worn it because I was waiting for it to be washed so I could wear it that weekend. I picked up the shirt, smelled it. It had a faint smell. Not of dirt. Just of use. Like when you wear clothes for a few hours. My stomach churned. I started paying more attention. Checking things before leaving. Taking photos. It felt like paranoia, but something was happening. And then there was the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday. I got home late from work around 11 at night, tired and hungry. I heated up a frozen pizza, ate it in front of the computer watching YouTube, and went to bed around 1 in the morning. I woke up at 4:30. I don't know why. I just woke up. That kind of sudden awakening where you're immediately completely conscious. I lay in the darkness, listening. The apartment was silent. I could hear the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen. The wind outside. Nothing else. I was about to turn over and try to go back to sleep when I heard it. A sound. Soft. Coming from the living room. Footsteps. Someone was walking in my living room. My entire body froze. Every muscle tense. I couldn't move. Could barely breathe. The footsteps were slow, cautious. Like someone trying to move silently but not being able to avoid the occasional creak of the old wooden floor. My mind raced. Burglar. Had to be. Someone had broken into the apartment while I was sleeping. Shit. My phone was on the nightstand next to me. Very slowly, millimeter by millimeter, I reached out to grab it. My fingers touched the screen. I pulled it under the blanket with me. The footsteps stopped. Total silence. I froze, the phone clutched in my hand, waiting. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my ears. Then the footsteps started again. Closer now. Coming toward the hallway. Toward my bedroom. Pure panic flooded me. I hadn't locked the bedroom door. Why would I? I lived alone. My bedroom door was ajar. I always left it like that so the apartment wouldn't get so stuffy. Through the crack, I saw the light from the living room. And then a shadow crossed. Someone was standing on the other side of the door. I squeezed my eyes shut, pretending to be asleep. I don't know why. Instinct maybe. Or pure terror. If they thought I was asleep, maybe they'd go away. Maybe they'd just take what they wanted and leave. I heard the door opening more. The slow creak of the hinges. Footsteps entering the room. Someone was in my room. I kept my eyes closed, my body rigid, desperately trying to keep my breathing steady, deep, like someone sleeping. But inside I was screaming. The footsteps approached the bed. Stopped next to me. And then I felt it. A presence. Someone standing right there, inches from me, looking down. I lay there, completely motionless, pretending to sleep while this person, this stranger, stood next to my bed watching me. I don't know how long it lasted. It felt like forever. Every second dragging infinitely. I could hear their breathing. Slow. Controlled. And then, finally, the footsteps retreated. Went back to the door. Left the room. I waited. I heard the front door open and close softly. I stayed in bed another 5 minutes, completely paralyzed before finally having the courage to move. I jumped out of bed, ran to the front door. It was unlocked. I had locked it. I always locked it. I was absolutely certain. I called the police with my hands shaking so much I could barely hold the phone. They arrived in 15 minutes. 2 young officers who took my story seriously but didn't seem as alarmed as I expected. "Did you check if anything was stolen?" one of them asked, looking around the apartment. I checked. My wallet was there with cash and cards. My laptop. My video game console. Everything there. Nothing was taken, I said, confused. The officers exchanged a look. "How long have you lived here?" "About 5 weeks. "And are you the first tenant?" "I don't know." "Why?" The older officer pointed to the door lock. "Look, there are no signs of forced entry. Whoever came and used a key." My stomach dropped. "Which means?" "It means someone has a key to your apartment. Could be a former tenant who never returned it. Could be the landlord. Could be someone who somehow got a copy. They recommended changing the lock immediately and contacted the building owner. We found out the next day. The apartment had been occupied by a guy named Derek until 2 months before I moved in. He'd been evicted for failure to pay and supposedly returned the key. Supposedly. The police went after him. They found Derek living with a friend across town. When confronted, he admitted it. He'd made a copy of the key before returning it. He'd been coming to the apartment, my apartment, regularly, during the day when I was at work, and sometimes at night. It was still my place, he told the cops, according to what they told me. I just couldn't let it go. He'd been coming to the apartment, using my stuff, eating my food, wearing my clothes, watching my TV, living there like it was still his, like I was the intruder, not him. And that night when he saw me sleeping, he just stood there, watching, maybe wondering who I was, why I was in his place. Derek was arrested. Trespassing. I broke the lease and moved out the next day to another place. Didn't even wait to get the security deposit back. I changed the locks on the new apartment the same day I moved in. Put a chain on the door. I sleep with my phone in my hand every night now. But the worst part? The part that keeps me up even with all the locks and chains? It's knowing it wasn't just that night. It was every night. How many times had Derek come in while I was sleeping? How many times had he stood next to my bed just watching? How many times did I wake up in the morning not knowing that hours before, a stranger had been there in the dark inches from me? I'll never know. And that's what scares me more than anything else. If you made it this far, you're braver than I am. Drop a like if these stories gave you chills, subscribe to the channel for more psychological terror every week, and tell me in the comments, have you ever had that feeling that you weren't alone at home? See you next time, if you can sleep after this.